Welcome to Conveyancing Matters. In this chat, Stu and I are going to talk to Noel Hunter. Welcome to Conveyancing Matters with Lorraine and Stu. Join us for a chat about all things property. So, hello, Noel Hunter, how are you?
I'm fine, Lorraine. How are you? I'm not so good, I detect.
Yeah, a bit of a splutter, but not too bad, not too
Okay.
bad. And Stu, how are you?
Yeah, I'm fantastic for a Monday morning, Lorraine. Ready for the week ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Raring to go.
Not really. I was trying to be positive.
Yeah. So, Noel, it's really kind of you to come back and join us again. I think this might be your third trip to Conveyancing Matters now. So you're soon going to. I think you're probably in the top league of guests, returning guests. So
I'm
it's
honoured.
very kind of you to join us. So Noel, for maybe the sake of the non-property lawyers who are watching this, you are the chair of the Consumer Code for Home Builders. So would you perhaps just give us just a tiny thumbnail for those who don't know about what the code is and what it's about and what it's for?
Yeah, the code has been in place for 14 years now, and it's there to regulate the interface between the seller or developer of new homes and the buyer. So it's very much about consumer protection. And it sets out the rules and relationship that should exist about the accuracy of statements, the way in which the transaction should be managed, the sort of information that should be passed on to the lawyer or the conveyancer, and what should happen post-sale as well. So it deals with the whole process, right from the point where the buyer goes in to look at the house, right to the point where the house is purchased and after sales as well.
Thank you. Well, and the after sales is important, isn't it? Because of course the Consumer Code now, you do have an independent arbitration service, which again our conveyancing viewers might be interested to know about, because quite often, of course, post completion things happen on new builds. So how does the arbitration fit in there?
Right. Well, we have an organisation who are, as you say, totally independent. The Independent Dispute Resolution Service is carried out by an internationally renowned company called CEDA. And they have been doing this for 14 years for us, so they are probably the most experienced in the field. Effectively, they do what an ombudsman does, and they assess the complaint, they adjudicate the complaint. Very skilled people doing this, and they determine what should happen next. And the builder who has perhaps been found wanting should put things right. Consumers should get their redress, and if they don't, then we have the means to, in some cases, take builders out of the market, because they are covered by the warranty schemes, and their insurance could be taken away from them, which means they can't operate. So it's a fairly stringent regime, and we have had to do that on about 10 occasions over the last years. So.
Well, you've mentioned the O word there, Noel, the ombudsman, CEDA being ombudsman-like. And Stu, I think it's fair to say right now there is a sort of, I would say, a degree of confusion. Would that be a fair word in the sort of property market more generally about the new Homes Ombudsman and the new Homes Quality Board? Would you say that's a fair comment, Stu?
Absolutely. And I think from a lawyer's point of view, I think, looking at retainers and looking at what we tell clients, I think, we're probably all a bit lacking on that front. I suppose in the normal resi stuff, we're really reliant on clients having surveys and pushing the quality of a property onto the surveyor. But whether we brief our clients properly when it comes to new build, I think, as a profession, we're probably not up to date, Lorraine.
No, I think that's right. And actually, that's one of the many reasons that I thought it would be useful to invite Noel back to perhaps help us clarify. So, Noel, would you just again sort of walk us through the new Homes Ombudsman, which of course is a relatively new body, and then what flowed from that, the new Homes Quality Board? Because the last time we spoke, as I understood it, you and your colleagues at the Consumer Code, Noel, had effectively sort of helped the new Homes Quality Board sort of cast its code, but then they had sort of seemingly stepped back a little. So you invigorated the Consumer Code and brought about your 5th edition, which has been with us for nearly a year now. So where did the new Homes Ombudsman and the new Homes Quality Board sit, Noel?
Well, there are a number of codes operating. They're all aligned now, which is the important thing. In other words, they do the same thing for consumers. There are a number of codes. There are about 6 or 7 code bodies operating, of which the NHQB are one of them. We are another. So they are in exactly the same position as us. Let's get this absolutely clear. There has been some misunderstanding that there is only one route to go in the future. Now, the government have not determined that. The government have said what they want to do is to have a statutory code. They have not determined yet when or how they're going to do that. They've also said they want to put in an ombudsman scheme, but they've not, again, said they have not said what that scheme will be or who will do it. And that's likely to be an independent determination by government. We've checked that. There's been a report in the last month or so from the Competition and Markets Authority, which has that report was sent to government. Sorry, the report came out rather longer than that. The report was sent to government about 6 months ago, and the report recommended that process, which is determined in the Building Safety Act, should continue. So, in other words, there should be put in place a statutory code and an ombudsman scheme. The government have just reported back on that CMA report, and they have said, yes, we think that's right. We should probably do that, but we have not yet done it. We've checked that with government. They have no immediate plans to do it. It's not in their timetable at the moment, and they have not determined what it will look like at the moment. So for the time being, at least, all of the codes that operate are freedom of choice for builders and developers. So whichever code they want to be a member of, they can be a member of. And that there's no change in that at all. So any suggestion from any quarter that there is a statutory code in existence is wrong, absolutely wrong. So all builders and developers have the right to choose any of the codes that currently exist, including ours.
So the new Homes Quality Board, Noel, and the Consumer Code for home builders are effectively the same thing on the same footing. Builders have the choice as to which of the codes amongst the others to choose from, and you're all still operating in the same market at the moment. Absolutely correct.
And there's been some misinformation about this, which, of course, I know a lot of angst with builders, and I think it's regrettable because some builders have decided to move codes at great expense, and that's been a great concern for them. We've had a lot of complaints from those builders who have said to us, we've been misled. We did not need to change codes. We could stay with the code we were currently in, and that's absolutely correct. They could. Let me just make one other point clear. The ombudsman scheme. All of the codes that operate at the moment are covered by something called alternative dispute resolution. That's also covers ombudsman schemes as well. They're all very similar in the way they operate, and they all provide consumer redress, and on the very similar basis. So nobody's disadvantaged by being a member of any of the codes. They're all doing the same thing, providing the same consumer redress and the same support for consumers. And so anything that's said to the contrary is clearly wrong.
So, Noel, where does the new Homes Ombudsman fit into this? Because that was introduced by the Building Safety Act, and if memory serves, I think I saw a month or two ago in the legal press a bit of a fanfare about somebody being appointed as the new Homes Ombudsman. So where does that body fit in?
Right.
The sort of 6 or 7 codes, of which the Consumer Code and the new Homes Quality Board are 2.
Well, the Building Safety Act, and this has been further verified by the CMA report, which I mentioned a moment ago, and the government's response to that. Their intention is to create a new Homes Ombudsman, but it is not created at the moment. It's just that happens to be that there is a body operating that uses the term new Homes Ombudsman, but it is not the statutory new Homes Ombudsman.
Oh, my word.
So that's quite misleading in a sense, and so the government is yet to determine this. Now, You can imagine, Lorraine, given the pivotal stage we're at with the building industry, that the government have got quite a few other priorities in this area at the moment. So we don't anticipate, and we've spoken to government within the last few days, we don't anticipate that this is going to happen in the short term. There's all sorts of things going on, about. We're not here to talk about today, but changing planning laws and so on, which is yet to happen. And so government priorities are elsewhere, obviously, because they're very anxious to increase the number of new builds. And alongside that, in due course, we might well see a new Homes Ombudsman set up and a statutory code implemented. Whether that statutory code will look like the existing codes in the marketplace remains to be seen. We think we have actually provided quite a good grounding for any statutory code. We believe we've test bedded a lot of new ideas in the code, our code, for example, over the last 14 years. And that will provide a very good test bed or a very good bedding for any statutory code that's introduced. But it's not happened yet.
So just to be clear, Noel, the new Homes Ombudsman, as envisaged by the Building Safety Act, which of course, bless you, Stu, is a phrase that you never want to hear again. But just to be absolutely clear, the new Homes Ombudsman, as envisaged by the Building Safety Act, is not the same as the new Homes Ombudsman that we've read about recently in the legal press that's recently appointed somebody as chair.
Correct.
Wow.
How can that even be done?
Well, I think it's been done, but it's not there's no illegality in that. Nobody's saying that's wrong, but they've used the terms which are used in the legislation. But it is not a government appointed body, so it's not a statutory body. In a sense, our own code, of course, has the backing of government in a number of ways. We are accredited under a government statutory scheme under the Consumer Code Approval Scheme. So we are an accredited code. We also use a government accredited contact centre to help consumers to get access to reparation. And so in a sense, and of course our CEDA, who do the scheme for us, they're an ADR scheme. Which is again government sponsored. It's government supported. It's ADR is managed by the Department of Business and Trade, and it is regulated by the Chartered Trading Standards Institute.
Goodness me, I'm genuinely shocked actually. And Noel, I know that you very much, and I would say quite rightly, of course, are going to maintain a rightful sense of propriety and dignity in the market in relation to these issues. But I have to say, in relation to the new Homes Quality Board, I think it's fair to say, Noel, that your own autumn 2024 newsletter and other communications, they haven't sort of pulled the punches, because you do talk about new misinformation risks confusion for new build home buyers and builders. And you said, and I quote, "We were disappointed to read reports quoting the new Homes Ombudsman stating that where builders are not signed up to their scheme, people will be left without the help that they need. As our members know, this is not the case." So this is really causing some difficulty in the market, Noel, isn't it?
It is unfortunate. I make it clear that I'm not pointing a finger at anybody in particular here. We're not sure where those statements have come from, to be clear. And the misinformation has been put out there, and clearly it's very unhelpful, and it's caused builders quite a lot of distress. I think it causes consumer confusion as well. I mean, one of the things we're trying to do, for example, is to make life easier for consumers. I mentioned a contact centre. We have set up a contact centre which allows consumers to come in, and if the consumer has got the wrong code, we will redirect them to the right code and the right administrative body, so that there is a seamless access to support. So we're trying to make sure that consumers are not confused. We've also put a lot of information out to the industry as well, including all those. We regulate about 10,000 builders, 5,000 active at any one time, and we've just been assessed, interestingly, by the Chartered Trading Standards Institute, and they have made some very positive comments about it. They say, for example, that Our code has developed very effective relationships with the industry, consumers, and stakeholders. These relationships are key in raising and maintaining awareness of theirs and other similar codes, as well as the Consumer Codes Approval Scheme, and that we continually strive to provide the highest level of consumer protection for home buyers. They go on to say that our board should be applauded for their exceptional leadership in making all the material generated to support business to comply with the code and educate the home buyer freely available. So we are getting a lot of support from those who regulate us, and the Chartered Trading Standards Institute has just made that statement in the last month.
Well, that's very much a testament to your leadership, I would have to say, Noel.
Well, there's a lot more people involved than me. So.
Well, yes, but you know, this sort of thing comes from the top, I think. Now, really, I have to say. So, I mean, Stu, what do what's your view on what's sort of happening in the market here? Because this is, it's difficult for our clients, isn't it?
But that's the key, isn't it? I think that is hitting the nail on the head. It's difficult for the client to, navigate their way through, what to do. We're sitting here and we're sort of, learning. We're confused sometimes, let alone the client. What on earth must they think? And like you say, giving them that information when they've got those problems is absolutely pivotal. But yeah, it does seem a strange one.
It's one of the challenges for us, Stuart, is that of course the building industry is a very diverse industry.
Absolutely.
And you'll appreciate in those 10,000 builders I mentioned before, there's at the top end, there's about 30 large builders who are building a lot of the houses in the UK, but there's a long tail of small builders who are out there as well. And that's quite important because the government, and you've probably seen this, the new government are very keen to build on small and medium-sized enterprises in their determination to build more homes. So making sure that those small builders are well informed and know what's going on is hugely important. That's a major task for us. We haven't got huge resources, and so we try to put out information. We put out a newsletter 3 or 4 times a year. We send that out through the warranty bodies and through other means. We put it on our website. So we're trying very hard to communicate with them all, but misinformation gets out much more quickly than correct information sometimes, and that's a frustration. So that's an ongoing challenge for us.
Yeah, I think it's difficult from a client's point of view, though. It's what the client sees, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what's so difficult. And when you throw a phrase like new Homes Ombudsman in there, you just have those assumptions would already be there, wouldn't they?
Yeah, it would. Yeah, it's fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had no idea that the new Homes Ombudsman that's out there is not the new Homes Ombudsman as envisaged by the Building Safety Act, which I think is something of a revelation. So really, if we've got any, a lot of conveyancers, a lot of the people watching Conveyancing Matters, Noel, work with smaller developers, medium-sized and smaller developers. So you mentioned this in your intro, but could you just expand a little on the fees for developers joining the codes? Just clarify briefly the difference between the Consumer Code and others.
Right. Well, let me just do one other thing before I go into that. Just to mention to you that we have invited and now happily have the Council for Licensed Conveyancers represented on our advisory body these days. So they came along for the first time at our last meeting and made a very good contribution to that meeting, and that we hope will continue. So that's very important to us that we are communicating well with that organisation. We have already sent them newsletters and so on, but they're now on our advisory forum as well, which is really important to us.
But just as a tiny aside there, Noel, sorry, just to go down that particular cul-de-sac, as a matter of interest, do you have any representatives from the Law Society or the SRA?
We have the Law Societies of England and Scotland represented as well. Yeah. So they've been on from the start, and they've always been there. And this is we have invited the Council for Licensed Conveyancers previously, and they've not been able to attend, but we have kept them in the loop in terms of information. Last time they sent somebody to the meeting for the first time, which is really good, and we're really pleased about that. So that's good news. You asked me about fees. I can't speak for other organisations. I can only speak from our own. The way in which it works is that we require that anybody who has a warranty under the schemes that we administer, which are NHBC, Premier Guarantee, Checkmate. Anybody running a warranty under those schemes must be a member of our code, or could be a member of the New Homes Quality Board code. They have a choice of being either. But if they're a member of our code, we do not charge a fee directly. In fact, I would be reluctant to charge a fee directly, because that gives some sort of capture to us of builders. Any payment is made through the warranty bodies, and I have no idea what the warranty bodies charge builders to be part of their scheme. So we don't make any direct charge to builders for involvement in our scheme. I would be reluctant to see a charge made directly, because clearly that means that we end up negotiating with builders what their fees should be. I think that offers some degree of prejudice in terms of our independence.
Yeah, that's interesting again. And just again, for the sake of sort of perspective, I suppose, Noel, you say you've got 10,000 sort of builders registered with the code, of whom 5,000 are active at any time. How does that compare with the other sort of 5 or 6 codes you've mentioned? What sort of collective membership in terms of numbers do they have?
I don't know. I think that you may find out something from their website. I mean, there are a number of codes that operate in relatively small areas, dealing with quite small warranty bodies, and deal with the members of those warranty bodies. Clearly, NHBC and Premier Guarantee are the largest warranty bodies in the UK, and handle between them something like about 95% of the market. There are a number of large builders which have migrated to the New Homes Quality Board, and they represent a proportion of the market, but we have no idea what that is. I'm talking about physical numbers of builders. You appreciate there are very large numbers of small builders who are building 1 house a year or 10 houses a year, very small amounts, but they nevertheless collectively add up to a lot of build, and that's one of the areas which the government see as very important in terms of their development of the industry to meet their targets of houses built.
Yeah, exactly. So, Noel, what, in your view, should conveyancers and property lawyers, solicitors be telling their clients about the various codes? What information would it be useful for the average new build buyer to have?
Well, all of the codes provide the same level of cover. First point. Second point, you do not need to move codes at this stage, because there is not a statutory code. Government will let you know when they've decided to make a statutory code. There'll be a lot of noise about that, I'm sure, when it happens, and there'll be quite a long lead time to it, because obviously people will have to rejig their approach to manage that code. So I would think once the government decide on a statutory code and develop that statutory code, there'll be another year before that code is introduced, because people will have to be able to manage their systems around it. So which is quite a big job, and this is why we only review our code every 3 years, because clearly we know that if we did it more often than that, we need to do it obviously at regular intervals. If we did it more often than that, it would be a great disruption for the industry to introduce the changes. So we try to make that a seamless process. We revise every 3 years. We introduce any changes. We give the industry a good lead time to introduce those changes, so it's not done overnight. And we're very tolerant about that, so that we don't criticise builders who haven't managed to meet it by a certain date. We just try and help them to make sure they do move in the right direction.
And what then would be, I suppose, flipping it the other way, what's the perceived driver or need for a statutory code in the first place?
Well, I think there was a perception previously that from parts of the industry that codes of practice were perhaps led by the industry itself. And it's true that the codes of practice were established by the industry. But one of the things we did during our last review was to make sure, I mean, our code, in a sense, has been independent from the start. Even though we had on our board representatives of the industry, all of the adjudications were made independently and have been for the last 14 years by an independent company who were not interfered with by us. They simply made their determination and we enacted it. So, but nevertheless, perceptions are important. So there was a perception that on the boards of codes, there were too many people from the industry. And that was a fair point, I think. And it's something I've been striving to address since I started. And we have now completed that task. We now have a majority of independents on our board. So we have consumer representatives in the majority on our board, people with notable backgrounds who worked in the CMA, the National Consumer Council, the Chartered Trading Standards Institute, people with a lot of pedigree in that area. We think it's important, nevertheless, to still have people from the industry on the board. Otherwise, the industry is not properly represented. And if you have just consumer representatives, you get perhaps solutions which are not going to work in practice.
Yeah.
So it's very important to have a balance, but the balance is in favour of consumers. And we also, as you've heard me say, have an advisory forum, which is also many consumers and independent sources on it, including the law societies and conveyancers, to make sure that we are not blind to the impact on other providers.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, to move on, Stu, what's your view? Have you seen? I mean, we talked off air about quality. I mean, of new builds. I mean, would you say that that's an issue that you're seeing in the market, Stu? A bit of a, well, frankly, let's face it, sort of decreasing of quality standards around new build properties.
Well, yes, is a generalised answer, and I think there has been for some time. I think a lot of it is, of course, the way in which the transaction works. I think the procedural structure of snagging and whatnot maybe not be fit for purpose in some ways. The actual process of signing that property off and that client involvement, I think, is key. And the interesting thing about the chat today is actually trying to point the client and give the client this information, because I think if you were to sort of have a problem as a lay person, as a client, and you were to try and Google something, find out this, I think it's very confusing for the client. I'm not sure it's well, without naming names, I think a lot of it is hidden in that new build warranty, and the innuendos of what that warranty does, which maybe it doesn't cover. I think does probably need a bit more exploring. But I think what's really important for us is what we put in our reports, what we tell our clients, and that's what I think is going to be really interesting from today. Trying to maybe break that down a bit more and give the clients a lot more information as to what is there behind the scenes.
Well, you
Because
said
there is no doubt, we couldn't deny the fact that there is, would we call it a problem? I wouldn't say there's a problem necessarily with new builds, but it is a factual part of the process that the clients are going to have issues following completion. And a substantial amount of those clients. If you're a practice that does new build, this is going to be part of your working sort of life.
And Noel, you mentioned sort of quality issues off air. So, where does the consumer code for home builders sit in that regard? It's clearly a concern for you. It has to be a concern for everybody involved in the new build industry.
Well, I think there's some who said, well, codes of practice can solve this problem. I don't agree they can. We can contribute to the solution, that's true. And I think our contribution to the solution is where we deal with some of the issues where snagging, for example, is dealt with when somebody buys a home. There are inevitably some residual problems, and it's making sure those problems get resolved. And the code can help with that. But in terms of making a sea change in quality in the industry, I think it needs quite a lot more than just a code of practice. So I think there are a number of contributions to that. One is that the warranties, of course, are a very important contribution. But the problem, in a sense, with warranties, there isn't a single warranty standard in the UK. They all vary. And I know that causes lawyers, conveyancers, a lot of confusion. Yeah. And I think your experiences in the law and not necessarily in the nuances of building standards. And so I think if there were a single standard, and that's where our recent review, the person who did our review for us, John Bridgman, CBE, made that recommendation that there should be a standard for warranties across the UK. I know government have looked at that possibility before. That may still be on the table. They've also looked at extending the period of warranty. So that's a very important area. So warranties are important. I think the other thing that's been talked about recently is about ensuring that building control comes back into as an independent regulator in the field, whereas there has been some degree of capture by the industry, I think, in the past. And I think having an independent building control system would be very important to contribute towards quality, so that there is good quality inspection, not only through the warranty procedure, but also through building control at a local level. And I think the other thing is about a sea change in attitude within the industry as well, to bring in accreditation. Most industries use an accreditation process, ISO standards or international standards or whatever, to ensure that the standards of production, whether it be a house or a bolt for a car or a car itself, standards of production are very important. So making sure standards of production are consistent, but more importantly, are improving year on year. And that's what those standards do. So I think there needs to be a sea change in approach to this to make sure that the end product, and after all, it is the most expensive and important product a consumer ever buys, that end product is secured for the consumer by a number of developments such as I've mentioned.
I think, though, Noel, I mean, just to play devil's advocate, but there are so many, one might say in the broadest sense, sort of vested interests in the new build market. And, some may say, well, actually sort of 30, 40 years of sort of fragmentation of process standards, et cetera, have really led us to the sort of nadir of the terrible building safety crisis that we're all in, with obviously Grenfell as that tragedy being the top of the list. But there is a cascading tragedy of lots of people stuck in properties that they now can't sell. So is the problem almost too big because we've got ourselves into this situation? This is a cumulative failure, really, on the part of government, building control, standards, developers, you name it.
No, I mean, I don't think it is. I mean, it's easy to paint a very black picture of this, but I should say that there are a lot of builders out there doing a really good job and working very hard to provide a good product for consumers. So what we have is on the fringes of the industry. It's not endemic. It is there, and it's more than it should be. And I think even the satisfaction levels in the industry are not where they ought to be. I mean, I think the satisfaction levels monitored by the industry are somewhere mid 80%. Now, one would expect with something as important as a home them to be mid 90% in terms of satisfaction of consumers. I think there's work to be done. I don't think it's terminal in quite the way you put it, right? And I think the industry can come back from this. I think clearly the issue of Grenfell is a section of the industry which is particularly troublesome, and that's now being addressed by government through consumer construction products regulations. Construction products will be more firmly regulated. I think on the last occasion we were together, I mentioned that in my past experience as a trading standards officer, we were given consumer construction products regulations to enforce 25 years ago, but with no money to do it. And so it didn't happen. And that's now being picked up, and resources are being put in through the Office for Product Safety and Standards, which is part of the Department of Business and Trade. That department will have a responsibility for construction products. I don't know what resources have been put in, but clearly they ought to be substantial, because testing a building product is extremely expensive, and it's a very important part of the process to make sure products themselves are fit for purpose. So there's moves in the right direction. Grenfell has been a wake-up call. I think governments are taking this very seriously. Both the last government and this government have taken this seriously, and we're likely to see some change going forward.
It's such a shame, though, isn't it, that we've ended up with the mess of the Building Safety Act? Because I mean, Stu, that's something your practice is still, you know, we're still seeing the difficulties with such a poorly drafted act every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the 80% is optimistic as well. The 80% figure you quote, I think, yeah, I'm not sure the stats that are collected on that one. I mean, in experience, we do volumes of new build, and yeah, I would have said it's substantially lower than 80.
Well, I'm only going on the figures that are collected at the moment. I mean, the government, you would be interested to know, the CMA and government have recently said that what they think is that in future there ought to be an independent body picking up these satisfaction figures so that they can be verified. But I know that there has been an improvement over years that we've been operating as a code, for example. There's been an improvement in satisfaction levels, but it's still got a long way to go.
So, Noel, I mentioned at the beginning of this, frankly, very interesting and enlightening chat, thank you, that the consumer code itself for home builders had been updated. You were doing that, or just finished it last time we spoke. And the 5th edition of the code has been with us now since the 1st of Jan 24. So as we sort of bring our chat to a close, Noel, what are the 2 or 3 sort of most significant changes to the code that you made for consumers, and how are they working out? You've had nearly a year of it under your belt now, so how are your changes panning out?
Well, the changes are we've updated certain things. I mean, we put in a cooling off period for reservation agreements. There's a 14-day cooling off period for those now, which is an important step forward, so that consumers can have a think about it after they've signed their reservation agreement, which is consistent with other areas of consumer law. And things like snagging, the way in which we handle snagging, quality issues of that kind have been upgraded. And we've also, of course, moved to now a totally independent board. I mean, I think that in perception terms, that makes a difference. It won't make any difference the way we operate, because we've always operated with independent assessment of complaints and adjudications. But nevertheless, it will, in perception terms, ensure that nobody suggests that there's any capture of our board by the industry.
So thank you very much for that, Noel. So if Stu or his conveyancers or Stu's clients want to find out more about the Consumer Code for Home Builders specifically, where will they find your resources? Just
Google Consumer Code for Home Builders. You'll find it on the internet. There's a very extensive website. We produced a lot of information on that website, both sectorized, so it's there for lawyers and conveyancers, it's there for builders, it's there for consumers. So we've put into whichever direction you're coming from, you can find information which helps you to understand what protections you've got under the code and what your obligations are under the code, or if you're a lawyer or a conveyancer, what you need to be doing for your clients.
Oh, excellent. Well, thank you. So, Stu, have you got any last minute observations for Noel?
Yeah, I had a look at the website earlier before we came on, and yeah, I think it's a definite tool that we can direct clients to, as well as finding out information ourselves. So I think, you know, what I've learned from this chat is we're definitely going to update the retainers that we have with our client and our reports to expand the information we can give them.
Excellent. Good. Any help we can get, we're grateful for, Stuart. Thank you.
Oh, bless you. Well, thank you, Noel, as ever. You know, really, really clear, you know, outline of frankly, some of the issues within your own industry, actually, as well as, of course, what conveyancers and their clients can be doing. So once again, just, you know, a heartfelt thanks for joining us, because you're always just an excellent guest. So thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Lorraine. Good to see you both.
Take care.
Soon better. Bye now.
Yeah, no, bye.
Bye. Bye.